So, let's look at using carbohydrate as a fuel. At 175 watts for a 3-hour training ride, you're going to be burning off in the region of 2,100 kilocalories. I'm assuming normal efficiency here, around about 20–22% efficiency. If you're taking in 400 kilocalories an hour, this would be the typical diet. You might have 1 gel, and you might have 2 bottles across that period, okay? Which is not an abnormal amount. And in fact today that's about what I went through in a 4-hour ride. So I was a little bit down, but then take into account that probably for the first hour, you know, my nice buffet breakfast this morning did help me get through that. Okay, so that's about right for that period of time. That brings us back with an energy balance with a deficit of 1,700 kilocalories. So you've fueled really, really well here, but you still come back with a huge kilocalorie deficit and well above what we said about that kind of like 200 kilocalorie negative a day. What about if you're on water only? Or the cardinal sin, coming back with just as much as you took out. It happens. I've seen some people come back with more than they went out with, but that's sharing bottles and things. But water only, what happens then? Well, chances are, over a 3-hour period, you won't be able to maintain the quality of the intensity you're working at. And I've certainly seen when people hit the wall, 25 watts lower maybe for over the period of time, that kind of power drop off throughout the ride. What effect does this have? So rather than the 700 kilocalories we saw with the feeding that you could burn by staying up at 175 watts, you're now down at 630 kilocalories per hour. Doesn't sound very much, does it? But then multiply that up by 3 and you do start to see some differences. I'm just going to add something in here, just to remind you, because we're going to start talking about the impact in longer rides in a moment, but remember the body has a limited ability to store and process carbohydrate. So there's got to be something going in. You can see in this graph here that the lower your muscle glycogen stores are, the smaller your time to, by the time you hit exhaustion, your muscle glycogen stores have decreased radically. I'm going to show you in a minute some interesting data on that. Just to bring you back to this graph, because we do have limited stores in our muscles, it's essential that we're putting some back in. You're not going to be able to fuel a ride which is going through 40 grams of carbohydrate. You're not going to fuel that endlessly. If that's coming out of you, that's a demand every single hour. So it's actually 80, because it's accumulative there, sorry, 80 grams. So let's put that into the work at 175 watts. Let's say this is a period, looking at over five hours. A female athlete, as we've spoken about in our example, might hold about 400 grams of muscle glycogen, carbohydrate stored in muscle glycogen. Might be drinking 40 grams every hour, but using 120. 280 is left in the bank at the end of that hour. Pop that in there. 40 grams of drink, but 120 used again. And you can see here how the accumulation of the eating away at your carbohydrate stores. You might be taking some in, but it's not at the rate that you need to keep it topped up. And at the end of the 5 hours, you're completely muscle glycogen depleted. Absolutely fine, because in 3 hours, we're here, aren't we? We're only doing a 3-hour ride. But maybe you can see the consequence of, most of you did a 5-hour ride today. You're probably glycogen depleted. You've got to go out and train again tomorrow. So what can we do to think about that? you're training on less carbohydrate than you actually need, not only will the power output be lower, but maybe you'll only be able to cycle for 2.5 versus 3 hours. So let's say the energy balance is around 1500 kilocalorie deficit at this time. So actually what we're saying here is that taking in carbohydrate drinks gives you a bigger energy deficit than training on water alone. So taking more energy in allows you to burn more energy. A second bonus of this is that if you can exercise at higher intensity for that period of time, for 3 hours, you're going to get back to your room and your excess post-exercise oxygen consumption is going to be higher. Your muscles are going to be at a higher metabolic rate than if you had exercised at a lower intensity. So actually you're burning more calories at rest if you train with better quality. And it's why people always report maybe a bigger hunger after high intensity training. Quite often it's that post-exercise component. And it's related to the time and intensity that you're out. So if you're exercising 30 minutes longer and 25 watts higher by using carbohydrate, and you also get this on top. As if that wasn't enough, there's another reason. You'll also have worked closer to your lactate threshold for 3 hours, and as we know, that adds up to a training stimulus over the sessions, your total hours a month. You know, you imagine each time you go out and you've missed 25 watts off or come back half an hour less because you've not adequately fueled. It's going to add up not only to the training, but also to your ultimate aim in burning that fat and coming back with more lean body mass. Just touch on this, 60 to 80 grams per hour. Latest research is even suggesting that you can hyperload, as it were, 100 grams an hour if you take a different mix of carbohydrate in there. But it's worth pointing out as well that this is the case in cold and hot conditions. If you're exercising in the cold, you might get some shivering response. That is a muscle tremor. Muscles are burning up more energy. In the heat, the glycolysis that turns the muscle glycogen into glucose is also speeded up. So if you're working in extreme environments, do remember that you've got a fluid need, but you've also probably got a higher carbohydrate need as well. But it's just balancing up. If you put 80 grams in your bottle, you might be slowing down the fluid emptying from your gut into where it needs it. So it's a real big balance there. That's why drinks such as the Science in Sport Go are good, because they also boost your electrolytes as well and just help that absorption process. I won't spend too much time on this because I know you're all real converts to using recovery drinks. But I want you to think about your recovery drinks across this spectrum of needs, really. Okay, it's all about recovering quickly, it's about maintaining your health, and it's also, this is the thing people forget, it's also about making your training session count even more. Because you put protein into the system, you're probably switching on a few genes, or those genes might be switched on by exercise, and they need some protein to build with, and you haven't got any. The most efficient way to get that muscle glycogen back into the system is to make sure that you get something in your system within 20 minutes. There is a window when the enzyme glycogen synthetase is at its highest, and if you give it lots of fuel and resources while it's active, you're going to get back a higher rate of muscle glycogen than you would if you leave it a couple of hours. So that's why a bottle of Rego is going to be better than waiting for or making your post-ride lunch. The lunch might be great, but it might just be too late to make the most of that 20 minutes window you've got. And the drink's especially formulated to not only get the protein in, but also to augment or to favourably impact on the insulin response, so that the muscles can take in the carbohydrate that's being delivered to it in the gut. There's one less reported advantage, is that because you're stabilising your blood sugar levels as well by taking on a drink very, very quickly, you're less likely to stagger in from your ride and think, oh wow, that gatto looks fantastic, and you start making bad food choices. So stabilise your blood sugar levels first, go and have a shower, come back out and think, right, now what does my body need?